Well, good evening, everybody. My name's David Sidwick. I'm the Police and Crime Commissioner for Dorset. And I'd like to welcome you to this Facebook event this evening. I hope you're enjoying the lovely weather. It looks like we've got a really good evening ahead of us. I thought I'd take a couple of moments just to remind everybody what I do, because the Police and Crime Commissioner job is one which is fairly opaque. My job is to represent you. That's, to me, one of the most important areas, if not the most important. So basically, I will understand your needs regarding policing and then put that into a police and crime plan, which is then delivered. I'm also responsible for resources to ensure we have enough money to have an efficient and effective police force in Dorset. I also do some of my own commissioning. And one of the other jobs I do is recruit a chief constable, which brings me to the introduction of Amanda Pearson, our Chief Constable for Dorset. I was very clear that there were a number of things that I wanted in a Chief Constable when we were going through the recruitment process. I wanted somebody with the experience of more than one force. I wanted somebody who understood the whole of policing, wasn't just a detective, wasn't just somebody who knew neighbourhood policing, but knew all of it. I wanted somebody who would understand the diversity of Dorset, not just the protected characteristics, but also the different needs of a rural area, an urban area, and a coastal area, from the largest conurbation to the smallest village. And I also wanted something else. I wanted somebody with the passion and grip to deliver the police and crime plan and ensure the force vision stayed on track with it. So I was delighted to recruit Amanda. And she's been with us for 3 months. And so I'm going to hand over to her. And I look forward to your questions this evening to both of us. So Amanda, would you like to say and introduce yourself?
Thank you. And good evening, everyone. And thank you for inviting me to your live event. I have to say, probably the proudest moment of my career is to be Chief Constable on my home patch. I'm incredibly proud to work on behalf of you to ensure that the police and crime plan is delivered across Dorset, and also that we are operationally set up to ensure that our communities are safe across the whole of Dorset. And as the Commissioner says, that means that our communities are safe for everyone. So everybody who lives, works and travels into our beautiful county. I've spent my first few months focusing very much on getting to know my people across Dorset, meeting many volunteers, staff and officers, and I've been impressed with how committed they are to making Dorset safe for everyone. And the thing that struck me so much about this police force is that the people who work for us and volunteer for us genuinely care about making a difference. But for this evening, I want to make sure that we're getting the balance right between delivering against the high harm and the high threat that we see as other police forces do, but at the same time that we are making a difference in your community and your neighbourhood. And not only are you in one of the safest counties, but that you feel that safety too. So really keen to hear from you on what we could be doing better this evening.
So I've got a question from Alex Bailey, which is to me, the Police and Crime Commissioner, and I'll read it out. My question is the Police and Crime Commissioner, who has honestly been put in the middle of this whole mess by the privately owned port, Dorset Council, and most guilty, the Home Office. Do you have the resources currently to police 500 single adult males between the ages of 18 to 65 in Portland? If not, will you be receiving additional funding, resources and personnel, as the barge will be here soon? And Commissioner, according to the FOA request, something responded on the 23rd of February. I'm sorry, I don't understand the last bit, but I will take the first couple of questions. I think what I'll do, though, is I'll talk about where I am with this at this moment in time. People have heard me say this, and I've said it very publicly before. This was an unlooked for gift, inverted commas. neither the police nor any of the other statutory authorities were consulted before we heard from the local authority that this barge was coming to Dorset. Now, I'm very clear that there are two issues for me. One is ensuring the safety of everybody involved, that is the people of Dorset, is also the asylum seekers on the barge. And from that point of view, as soon as we heard this, Dorset Police and their partners have been planning for this barge to arrive. Now, regarding the resources, I have been also very clear that I do not expect the cost of this to fall on the people of Dorset. And I'm not going to actually talk about where we are with that, because both the Chief Constable and I are still negotiating around the resources that we believe we need. What I will do, though, is hand over to Amanda, so Amanda can actually give us a sense of the planning around this barge which is coming, and also a sense of how she sees the playing out from the point of view of any crime. So if I hand over to you, Amanda.
Thank you, Commissioner. As you said, since we heard the news that we were going to have this influx of another 500 people into our community, we, of course, as you would expect policing to do, has been planning for how we can provide policing to that community, and also how we can anticipate what the impact might be on the communities, particularly of Weymouth and Portland. So a lot of work has taken place with the local policing commander and our partners, looking at how we can ensure we provide policing to this community. Alongside that, we have to recognise that where similar communities have arrived, that we have seen associated protest and some crime and disorder. For those reasons, we have been planning with our partners again on the contingencies, should we see any of those things, in how we will respond. As the Commissioner mentioned, that means there are some operational requirements that we have shared with the Home Office, and that we would expect and hope are funded from outside of Dorset Police. But what I do want to reassure you, if you are part of that community of Weymouth and Portland, is that we have been working on these plans now for quite some time, and we're very conscious that we need to ensure that policing is there for the people of Weymouth and Portland, as well as an influx of 500 people into our community.
So this is a good question from Anthony Fuller. Why has Bournemouth become such a high crime town? So I think that's a really interesting question. Amanda, I'm going to ask you to talk about it from an operational perspective. We're about to go into the summer. And obviously we know this is our highest demand area. So I'd like you also to talk about the plans for the future as well.
Thank you. I think the first thing to say is that actually, relatively speaking, we are a low crime force and we are a low crime area. And we've enjoyed kind of being the sixth safest county in England and Wales for quite some time. And of course, it's concerning when we see crime and incidents in our local town centre. But relatively speaking, we are still a particularly safe place. Not surprisingly, the areas where we have the most concentration of people, whether that's people living, working and visiting, are those places where we see high demand. And of course, all of us have experienced how that increases substantially over the summer months. What I can say is that our local policing commander has been working very closely with our partners on ensuring we know this happens every summer, that there is an influx of people into Dorset, particularly our beaches. And we have been working with partners to ensure that we have enhanced visibility, that we will be visible, we will be engaged, and we will be connected with our people through the summer, with our publics, and that we have those plans in place to ensure that there is sufficient policing in and around those places likely to attract more people as they come into our beaches over the summer period.
I think it's probably important to add that there has been a significant increase in the number of officers for Dorset. You'll have seen that there's an extra 174 moving through the system at the moment, and some of those have already come out, and I know have already been allocated, for example, into Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. So that will help with the situation. Some of the Some of the high crime, as you refer to, is also about significant perception in the press. And we've got to make certain that we address the issues of knife crime in our society, and also the issues around alcohol consumption in a nighttime economy. And some of the work that I do at a different level is also looking to address that. I spent most of today, for example, at the alcohol reduction and homicide group in London, talking about nighttime economy and what more things we can do in order to make it safe. As you've heard, we are the sixth safest county in the country. I want us to be the first safest, and it's picking up every possible piece of best practice in order to drive that upwards in order to reach the top spot. So thank you for the question. Rob Stirk, what are you going to do about the drug problem, especially within teenagers in Weymouth? So thank you very much indeed. That's a really, really important question regarding the issue of drugs in our society. So I'm very clear that you need three things. You need tough enforcement, which are talked to from a strategic level. You need effective treatment, and you need, above all, impactful prevention. And so from the enforcement end, there's two operations. Actually, what I'll do probably is I'll just mention the names and I'll let Amanda speak about them both, because very much that's in the operational arena. So there's Operation Scorpion, where 5 forces and 5 PCCs across the Southwest come together to make the place a hostile environment for drug dealers and antisocial drug takers. And then there is Operation Viper, which is the local Dorset solution to address community drug dealers and also county lines. From a broader perspective, we have in Dorset now something called a Combating Drugs Partnership, which bring together all the partners. So the local authorities, the NHS, public health, education, the police, probation, prisons. That operates and has 3 work streams, one about enforcement, one about treatment, and one about prevention. But taking the young people and that issue straight head on, I believe there needs to be more funding, and significantly more funding, around the prevention piece. And I'm campaigning upwards into government. I sit on something called the bi-monthly ministerial forum with the policing minister, the health minister, and Minister of Justice, etc. And we have made prevention a core part of that work. We have the Safer Schools team, which will go into schools and talk about drugs and the law. But I'm also commissioning other work about the harm of what I call illegal gateway drugs. I don't use the word recreational. I don't believe in it. And these illegal gateway drugs, cannabis, MDMA, ketamine, and now nitrous oxide. I believe that the harm of those needs to be presented in a way which is impactful for young people. So that's some of the work that is happening at a strategic level. Amanda, do you want to talk about those 2 operations and some wider stuff as well?
Yes, thank you. So importantly, in terms of tackling drugs, it's important not just to focus on those users of drugs, and particularly our young people, but to make sure that we are tackling drugs throughout the system. And that means focusing on those organised criminals who would look to come into Dorset, bring with them drugs, weapons, criminality, and exploit our young people. So we work with our colleagues across the Southwest and with other agencies to ensure that the Southwest is a hostile environment for those who want to bring drugs into our county. And we run those operations on a regular basis. They're very impactful, very visible, and we know that they have an impact in terms of particularly county line drug dealing. We've seen a significant drop in the threat from county lines. We've managed to disrupt a number of organised crime groups, and we've been able to support this with local operations through Operation Viper by using the additional officers that came through Uplift to create something called neighbourhood enforcement teams. And those neighbourhood enforcement teams are there to support your local neighbourhood policing teams who know where the problems are in their communities, but need that additional help in terms of disrupting organised criminality and having the numbers and the capacity available to ensure that they can get the warrants they need to enter the premises where we believe people are dealing drugs, and to close those premises down and to arrest those people within them. Those have been highly successful in terms of supporting our neighbourhood policing team and our local policing teams. And so far already they have achieved over 500 county lines disruptions, which is a huge amount in terms of tackling drugs in Dorset.
Thank you. Very good question. Okay, question from Michael Holland. What is going on to tackle the fire on Bourne Valley as the summer holidays are around the corner? So this is very much the issue of the heath fires. And I know that Bourne Valley had a significant issue recently. So I guess this is talking about the link up between the wardens and the neighbourhood policing team, Amanda.
Yes, as part of our summer planning, we work with our other agencies, the wardens and of course the fire service, so that ahead of the summer itself, we focus on prevention. So we're looking at the areas where we think those historically have been places that have been vulnerable to fires. We work on ensuring as much as possible that we can prevent those fires occurring through public messaging, through visibility and through patrol. And we agree with the wardens and with policing and with fire how we will respond to those quickly and effectively if they should break out. As you probably know yourselves, though, unfortunately, once a fire takes hold on a heath, it's devastating. And that is a threat, not just to the heath and the wildlife, but to the people of Dorset. So the clear messaging around prevention, as always throughout the summer, is to treat our heathlands with respect, to not use barbecues, not to drop lighted cigarettes, and not to create fires anywhere near or on our heathlands.
Thank you. Okay, this is from Richard Bloomfield. I am concerned about the increasing number of motorcycle thefts in the area. There are now several every day and reports of youths riding sometimes 3 up with bolt croppers looking for other bikes to steal. There seems to be very little preventing them. What measures, bait bikes, trackers, etc., can be put in place to catch these people? It's been happening for months. So I'll let you come in a moment, Amanda, regarding the operational side of this. From my perspective, I became aware of this probably a month or so ago and went and spoke to an individual bike retailer about what more could be done. I'm looking into that at the moment, and I'm looking into what my office can do to help. I'm very aware of this, particularly, in my understanding, if this is correct, is that these are the, if I can put it this way, they are the smaller motorbikes, the sort of motorbike you'd buy to get to work on, rather than the Harley Davidson bike you might take out at the weekend. And for a lot of people, this is their main form of transport. So for that reason, I am getting quite upset that this is occurring, because some of these bikes are used for a couple of days and then just left in a terrible condition, even if they are retrievable. So I absolutely understand this issue, and I will come to you hopefully with some news around what my office can do to help in the near future. But Amanda, from an operational point of view, what more can be done in order to basically address this issue?
Thank you. So from the first part of your question around prevention, I think there is actually a huge role that prevention can play in terms of theft of motorcycles, and particularly ensuring that bikes that are unaccompanied are locked, chained and covered. We know from other areas where we've had such problems with motorcycle crime that just undertaking those 3 actions can significantly reduce the likelihood of a bike being stolen. Then, of course, should motorcycle crime occur, then that's for us in terms of enforcement and disruption. And the local policing teams are aware of those areas where these bike thefts are occurring. They have been able to map where that is happening. And I know they have local operations in place in terms of targeting those, working closely with our roads policing colleagues so that we ensure that where that has happened, if we've identified somebody on a stolen bike, we can ensure that we can bring that to a stop safely. and successfully. There are lessons to be learned from elsewhere in the country where this kind of crime was taking hold, and we will apply those lessons in terms of tackling this crime across Dorset.
Yeah, I think there's quite a few questions on motorbike thefts, so I think that's something which will be looked at with high interest by our residents, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we get hold of it. So this is a question from Laura Bree. When can we have more local police officers regularly on the beat and visible on a daily basis in every small town in Dorset as promised? So that talks very clearly to the priority 2 of my police and crime plan of having the police more visible, connected and engaged. Over to you.
Thank you. I think I mentioned at the beginning of this about the numbers of new recruits that we've been able to bring into Dorset as a result of uplift funding from the government. We have 174 new additional officers who have come into Dorset Police, and at least half of those have now completed their training and are being allocated into the front line. So you will see and feel a difference in terms of visible policing. And I know from the feedback that I get in Weymouth with the 100 Days of Summer, and in some of our smaller towns in Christchurch, in Verwood, that people are starting to see and feel that difference. We still have a large number of students who are working their way through learning how to be a police officer. Once those have completed their training, I am confident that you will see and feel a difference again. It's unfortunate that we have been in a position previously where we haven't been able to populate all of those places in our neighbourhood policing teams. But now, as we have those new officers come through, who are also, I have to say, spending a good part of their training in their neighbourhoods in neighbourhood policing, I'm confident that you will see and feel the difference.
Brilliant. So, question from Thomas Anderson. Good evening. Please, can you tell me why the number of PCSOs are so low across Dorset, and when will Dorset get new PCSOs? Well, whilst I know the answers, I think it's you who should answer that, Amanda.
Thanks. I'm really glad you asked that. And one of the first things I want to say, because my last answer focused very much on police officers, is as far as I'm concerned, as a Chief Constable of Dorset, PCSOs will always have a place in neighbourhood policing. So for me, neighbourhood policing teams work best when they are a mix of officers and PCSOs. Those PCSOs provide the consistency in terms of that visibility and engagement with their communities. And they undertake a lot of the prevention work that we know is so important to keeping our communities safe. At the moment, we are unfortunately in a financial position where I am not able at this moment in time to recruit PCSOs into the vacancies that we have within force. I am doing some work in force over the next 3 months to get to a position where we can finalise what our neighbourhood policing model looks like within the budget and the finances we have. But I'd reiterate that PCSOs will very much be a part of that. At the moment, I can't say exactly how many and where they will go, but we have no plans to exit PCSOs from our organisation or from our neighbourhood policing model. We are very convinced by the benefit that they bring, the visibility, the engagement with communities, and I look forward towards the end of this year to be welcoming new PCSOs back into Dorset Police.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it should be also acknowledged that some of the PCSOs who we don't have anymore have actually joined Dorset Police as part of the uplift, which is good as well. Next question, please. So this is from Annie Daisy Green. Who are the partners you refer to? Oh, crumbs. So I'll have a go, and then Amanda, if you fill in behind me where I forget them, if you see what I mean. So partners. Well, it starts with the local authority. That is one of the biggest partners who both myself and the police work with. It is also the fire service, NHS, public health, education, youth justice, prisons, probation, the courts, magistrates, judges, government, MPs. Then you've got, I'm just thinking through, you've got the rural area, you've got the National Farmers Union, you've got the Dorset Wildlife Trust, you've got the Cornish Mutual, National Farmers Union Mutual. You'll go, Amanda. Take over from me. I've done a few.
I think you've done a pretty good job on that. And obviously it depends on the scenario and the problem that we're looking at. There will always be a stock of partners that we will turn to, which Dave has mentioned, which includes the local authority, our health partners, education, and our blue light partners. But depending on what's happened, so if we were looking perhaps at a spate of crime, so if we took moped theft, for example, we would start to work with the motorcycle industry. We'd work with communities who were motorcycle owners to talk about what we might be able to do to design out some of that crime and what steps we might take to be able to recover bikes more quickly and before they were damaged. If we were talking about the barge, which we were talking about at the beginning of this evening, and working through contingencies. So if we got a new community on a vessel at sea, we need to start thinking about if there is a problem on the boat, if there is a fire, if there is some other kind of civil emergency on the boat, how do we get on there and how do we put that out? We'll be working with our blue light partners, but also with the port, with the RNLI, with the Coast Guard. And it might be that we need to bring in new partners to look at some innovation and creativity in terms of solving a problem. But I guess for our neighbourhood policing teams, their partnerships are very much with their parish and local councils, with their local community groups, and often with their local community and voluntary services. And we work with those at a kind of tactical and neighbourhood level, but also at a strategic level. So if we're dealing with something like rape victims or victims of serious sexual violence, we would be looking to our partners who are advocates for those victims to learn from them as to how we could better deliver a service to somebody who's a victim. So there's just some examples of the types of scenarios and the types of partners we work with.
So this is Mark Dean. How can you promote neighbourhood policing when the very basics of policing, such as parking abuse on zigzag lines, disabled bays, cyclists thinking they're not answerable to the law, deal with the very basics, please? So, well, I do know that I have seen police officers dealing with some of those basics, including zigzag lines. But do you want to talk about that sort of more broadly, Amanda?
I think you're absolutely right. I think some of these things are things that it's not just good enough us saying you are safe, this is one of the safest communities, is that when people see things like that, they are symptoms of feeling that an area is not safe and that it's not in control. Of course, not all of those things are the responsibility of the police. So in terms of enforcement of some of those things, there are local authority partners, and we work with their community safety staff to ensure that if there are persistent problems in an area, we can tackle those and deal with them. You may have seen recently on our social media that we had concerns in Sandbanks about antisocial use of vehicles. So we dedicated an operation, which is still ongoing, in terms of intercepting those vehicles and, where we need to, issuing warning signs around seizing vehicles that are involved in antisocial behaviour.
Thank you. Jade Starmer. I'm concerned about financial crime. My elderly neighbour recently had a large sum stolen. Luckily, his bank supported him, but it feels like a large area of concern as these criminals get more sophisticated. What investment is happening to prevent or tackle this issue? So it's a wicked problem. There is more investment going into this. There's a new governmental strategy around fraud at this moment in time. So just to frame where we are with this, a lot of it is about prevention, and I'm certain Amanda will talk more about that. No force in the country can actually chase down the perpetrator for a lot of this because they are actually abroad. And that is why we're reliant on national fraud agencies such as the NCA, the City of London Police, etc. Amanda.
Yeah, as you say, in terms of enforcement and chasing down criminals, we do work with the NCA. We're also part of the Southwest Regional Organised Crime Unit. And within that, we have an economic crime department who also work with our local teams and our local neighbourhood officers. In fact, we were asked to present quite recently at government level the work we were doing around prevention. And I'm sure after this, we could share the link to some of the videos and some of the material we have in terms of how you can help protect yourself against financial crime, because there are some simple steps that we can all take to make ourselves a little bit sort of make it less likely that we're going to be targets of financial crime. And that's in no way saying that it's anybody's fault or responsibility that they're a target, but there are things we can do, as we have done for years with physical crime. We've learned to lock our cars, we've learned to set our alarms on our houses. We haven't perhaps all learned to take as much care over our bank accounts and our financial affairs. But in terms of that enforcement, just as I reiterate, we work really closely with the Regional Organised Crime Unit. We've had some quite successful operations within Dorset where we've seized a lot of money from criminals who had taken those from particularly elderly victims, and were able to return some of that money. And we will keep pursuing those people, and particularly pursuing them to recover those assets and then redistribute them to those victims who suffered.
And briefly, from a prevention point of view, over the last couple of years, my office has been working with other partners. So they've worked with Citizens Advice, Age UK, McCarthy and Stone, in order to make certain that the information is available for those who are vulnerable and elderly, particularly around this. And also we have something called the Safer Dorset Business Partnership. And again, cybercrime and the fraud which comes with it is a major plank of that work. We now have a monthly newsletter which goes out to businesses, showing how they can protect themselves from fraud and cybercrime. So there's much work to be done, but it's about the prevention.
Can I just say something? I know that actually being the victim of a financial crime can be as impactful of being the victim of a physical crime. And I think maybe for too long in this country, we hadn't accepted and acknowledged that, but we very much do endorse it. We know the trauma and the impact that it can have on victims. And that's why we are determined to work with the Regional Organised Crime Unit, the NCA and the City of London to where we can track down those perpetrators, bring them to justice and recover the funds for you.
And there is free info on our website about cybercrime prevention for older people, should you wish to look at the website. Okay, so we have a question from Mark Gibson. Why did I have to wait yesterday in Poole Police Station for 2.5 hours to see someone? Also, why do you wait 40 minutes on the phone on 101? Can you answer that, please? So I'll have a little bit of a bash at the 101 one, and I'll pass to you, Amanda. So the issue that we have is around the demand, which comes into the force. 101 was meant to be a clearinghouse for both the local authority and the police. Unfortunately, it became just calls in and reports to the police. And for that reason, there is a lot of calls which Dorset Police get, which are not police. And they can include the, quite frankly, the completely not useful. We have had 999 calls, for example, of my McDonald's Deliveroo hasn't delivered. That's not an emergency. So there are issues with what gets reported on 101. Nevertheless, it needs to be better. It is improving. We've put in investment. We put in investment both in people, but also we have now moved to the single online home online platform, which is much more efficient, and that will should gradually free up telephone operators to be able to answer the phones for those who can't use the online system. So I appreciate there's more work to be done. It's one of the things which made me become Police and Crime Commissioner, was the delay on 101. So I absolutely get it, and we're going to keep on working in order to drive that oil tanker into port. Amanda, do you want to talk about the police station?
Yeah, firstly, I'd like to apologise that that somebody listening live who's put that question in has had that experience where they've had to wait so long at Poole front office. Where we have those front offices and those counters, we do expect to be able to provide the service for you when you attend there. So I'm more than happy to take that away and look into why that didn't happen on that occasion. And if you still have a matter that's outstanding, then please do let us know and we can contact you to deal with something. As the Commissioner says, there are a number of different ways that you can contact us. There will always be some times when perhaps you need to come into a police station in person. But also, as the Commissioner says, you can use the single online home. We've got a new website. It's much easier and quicker to use. It also means once those forms are completed, that actually it goes directly to the right team who can respond to you, rather than sitting in a queue for several days, perhaps waiting for it to be assessed to see who could deal with it. In terms of answering the phones, I agree, it needs to be quicker and it needs to be better. And it's one of the focuses of my Chief Constableship, is looking at how quickly and how appropriately we answer the contact, so that we can ensure we give the right response for that person in those circumstances at that time. In order for us to do that, we do need to be able to manage down some of that demand, which is not relevant for policing, as the Commissioner just outlined. But also we're bringing in new technology, which means it would be quicker for us to answer those calls. And we are making sure that we have the right mix of police officers and police staff in those call handling and control rooms to make sure that your issue is dealt with much earlier than it is at the moment.
Thank you very much indeed for that question. And indeed, thank you to everybody who is putting in the questions tonight. We should mention that the questions are coming from people listening to the broadcast. Nothing's pre-planned or scripted. So, Natasha Carr, what is being done about use in Swanage? Antisocial behaviour, knife crimes and knife fights. Use are ruling our beautiful town and getting away with it. So this is very close to my heart, because I was in Swanage only last week to talk about this. And there's a number of things that can be done. I outlined a number of funds which I have available to address antisocial behaviour, and also putting in place diversion for young people. I also made an offer, which I believe the Town Council is going to take up, of more more CCTV in Swanage. But it's also about the policing and the visibility as well. And it's also for all of us, actually, every single person. If it's young people, then I'd say also, do parents know where their young people are? Let's ask that question as well, because we're all in this together to keep our places safe and our county beautiful. Amanda, do you want to talk about from the operational policing end for Swanage?
Thank you. And I know there have been concerns from the community there around recent incidents in Swanage, and that our local officers attended a community meeting recently where there was discussed at quite some length. But for those who weren't able to attend that meeting, just to reiterate, one of the benefits of having additional officers into Dorset has meant that we can put a dedicated neighbourhood policing officer back into Swanage to work with the PCSOs that are already there. But of course, whilst they might be your local face of policing, it's not just them that work in Swanage on their own. They're supported by the wider response teams from Dorset County. Those teams are based in Wareham. They're also supported by our neighbourhood enforcement teams that I talked about earlier, and they have already been in Swanage undertaking drugs operations to support the local officers. And they're supported by the rural crime team, who work across Dorset tackling rural criminality. So whilst it looks like there's that lone officer dealing with problems in Swanage, they're part of a much bigger policing family that they can call on and the community can call on to come and deal with those problems of antisocial behaviour and crime in Swanage.
Thank you. Claire Taylor, you need to sort out the drinkers, drug takers and beggars in Bournemouth Town Centre and Gardens. Well, I absolutely agree with you. The issue of aggressive begging and drug taking is one that I'm very aware of the community concerns for Bournemouth. There are some operations which are occurring and there are plans for the summer. It would be wrong of me to talk about those, except I will mention the words Operation Fireglow, which I'm certain the Chief will cover as well. So Amanda, do you want to just take a word about that? Because the aggressive begging sounds like low level, but also it is exactly the thing which concerns people.
Yes, of course. And it relates to my earlier point around not just being safe in terms of statistics and crime levels, but actually people feeling safe. And how sometimes that kind of intimidation and behaviour can mean that people feel unsafe. So I know that the local policing teams and the commander have been working very much with our local authority partners in the area about increasing the visibility and enforcement action that is taken, particularly in that area where the aggressive begging and the street drinking is happening. The other thing they are policing response and presence within Bournemouth Gardens. And you may have seen some of the activity on social media where they are reporting on a daily basis when they have been in the gardens, what action they have taken and what has happened as a result of that action. That will continue throughout the summer and then will be enhanced by that wider summer plan, ensuring that there is more visibility and enforcement action across Bournemouth throughout the summer months.
But I think it's fair to say that we talked about partners earlier, and this is something where partners really are to the fore. And it is the police and the local authority working together, which will basically tackle the ASB and address the issues. It's also about the CCTV. It's also about the cutting back the foliage. It is all the things which come together in order to make a neighbourhood feel and look loved, as well as being enforced.
Absolutely. It's getting to the heart of what's causing the problem. At the moment, what we're doing is dealing with the symptoms of that. But actually, we need to work with partners to get to the heart of what's causing the problem, who's got a responsibility to tackle which bits of the problem, and then holding each other to account to be sure that we've all done our part in terms of making that feel as safe as any other part of Dorset.
Spot on. Thank you. This is a question from Dalrymple, I think it's Louise Dalrymple. What investment do we have in our teenage generation that are getting involved in crime and some such at tender age? We don't want to criminalise, but we do need to educate and bring back moral standards to our community. So that's a really wide question. I mean, I'm very clear that there needs to be much more talk about the 3 R's. And for me, the 3 R's are responsibility, respect, and rights. And I think at this moment in time, everybody talks about rights rather than respect and responsibility. It's something for consideration around a lot of the issues which we talk about. We talk about drugs, we talk about misogyny, we talk about racism, and it is where those sorts of moral values get bent out of shape. And I believe that we need to start earlier with our young people. We need to start talking about those sorts of things in our primary schools and possibly even earlier, obviously in age-sensitive ways. But that's a wide question, that really is. So one of the things I'm really keen on is when we talk about partnerships is to get the education around the table, both at a national level in order to talk about this sort of problem, but also talking locally. And funny enough, I was in a school this morning talking to a head teacher about some of these sorts of issues. Amanda, it's a wide question.
It is a wide question. I think one of the things I'd start with saying is a reminder that actually the majority of our young people do not get involved in crime and disorder. Actually, 99% of young people don't carry knives. And a large proportion of young people volunteer in their communities or contribute to their communities in some way, such as our own police cadets do. So I just think when we talk about young people, we need to be cautious that we're not labelling all young people as getting involved in crime and antisocial behaviour, because I really don't think that they are. But as you said, there are opportunities. Policing is about enforcement, but policing is also about problem solving, and it's also about prevention. And we do work within schools, we do work within community groups, and our neighbourhood policing officers and our PCSOs are engaged with those community groups to, as much as possible, build that relationship between policing and young people. We also operate something called the Community Consequences Scheme, which shows a ladder of interventions. As a young person's behaviour may deteriorate, then we will take firmer action as that continues. But what we do see is that majority of young people at the first couple of rungs of that ladder, with an intervention which is either a diversion or a warning, that actually they don't repeat that crime and antisocial behaviour. But it does take a whole partnership approach, I think, to bring those young people up in a safe environment, which means that they are not tempted or exploited into crime and disorder.
Absolutely spot on with everything you've said, Amanda. And I think one of the things which is important is to remember that the young people who come through the consequences schemes, even those who get towards the further end of it, there are still opportunities to engage and try and keep them out of the criminal justice system. It is important that if everything doesn't work, though, that ultimately we remember that there are communities who may need a criminal justice intervention in order to keep them safe. I think the point I'm trying to make here is also about, we need more things for young people to get involved in, which gives them a different interest. You very clearly said that it is not everybody. Absolutely right. I would say the vast majority of young people in Dorset are lovely. And to help with those who may be starting to fall into antisocial behaviour or worse, my office has something called the Fix the Future Fund. And that will be coming back in September. That's for youth groups who wish to give experiences, opportunities for those young people who maybe can't afford it, but would actually benefit from it rather than taking a different path in life. So I just want to make that point about the Fix the Future Fund. Thank you. Steve Biddle, what can be done to stop shoplifters in Southbourne Grove just blatantly walking into shops and stealing? Amanda, I will come to you, but I'm just going to say a couple of things about this. I am mortally fed up with it, right? And I'll tell you why I'm mortally fed up with it, because that's my Tesco Express. And 3 times I've chased shoplifters down the street yelling "stop thief" at them. It is a wicked problem. The Safer Dorset Business Partnership, which I've started, brings together business improvement districts, chambers of trade, and large retailers. And the Tesco Express regional manager is going to join that. But I think there is something here about, again, it is about all of us standing up around this issue. Whilst I was trying to stop this fella from making off with the stuff down the street, there were people in a cafe outside who said, "Oh, leave him alone, mate. He's only doing what everybody does." Well, I'm afraid I don't accept that. I think it is up for all of us to call this sort of thing out. I am intent on getting a better solution around shoplifting. I know we can, because I've seen it happen in certain parts of Dorset. In fact, my office had a letter from a retail manager. Congratulations, Dorset Police, on the work they'd done, because he'd saved over £250,000 in the last year compared to the prolific shoplifting he'd had before. So there is things that can be done. I just think that we need to basically grab it and sort it. Sorry, Amanda, that was a bit of a rant from me, but I do care passionately about this area.
Yeah, of course. And we know that it will be having an impact not just on those shopkeepers, but on the community as well, who are seeing that. I think there are a number of things that we can do, and I know that the neighbourhood policing team are working closely with that neighbourhood enforcement team in response to this specific problem, and are looking at targeting the repeat offenders that they know are operating in that area. That needs to be reinforced with targeted patrols. So we run analysis that shows us hotspots, that shows us where areas are more likely to be subject to crime than not, and ensure that our officers and PCSOs are in those areas at the times that we think is going to be most likely to deter offenders. But in that deterrence, we do need to work closely with our local businesses too, and share good practice from other companies, other businesses, and what steps they can take to contribute to that deterrence, whether that's CCTV within their shops, repositioning items on display, thinking about the staff that they have on duty and whether they need any enhancements in terms of security, so that together we can produce that deterrent effect. And then when crimes are committed, that the police response is there to ensure that we effectively enforce the law and prosecute those offenders.
Oh, great question. David Anderson. Distraction theft seems to be on the rise in busy areas. With summer coming, what's the strategy? I really do believe that's one for you, Amanda.
Yep. So distraction theft is a way of operating that some criminals will take, where they may operate in more than groups of more than one person. So that whilst somebody is engaging you, asking you about something, then somebody else may be relieving you of your property. I'm aware that there has been some of those recently. I haven't seen anything that suggests it's kind of endemic across Dorset, but I think what's worked well in the past with those types of offences is really that awareness raising around crime prevention. We still see quite a large number of people who've got open bags, phones tucked in their back pockets, items that are accessible to someone should they want to relieve you of it. But of course, alongside that, we need to make sure that we are doing our part in terms of understanding where that's happening and targeting the places and the people who we think are involved in that. So please ensure that you are reporting it to us, even if it was an attempt, because that helps build the intelligence for a picture for us in terms of those people that are involved in this type of crime.
This is from Taff Hughes. Why is the county town of Dorset without a police station which is open, considering the impact to the population of New Poundbury? So there were about 14 police stations. What we're really talking about is front offices here. There was about 14 of these front offices where you could go in, which have been shut across Dorset. The issue for a lot of the offices which were shut was that the footfall was relatively small, so they weren't economically viable to remain open. Having said that, I am very clear, because I asked you as the people of Dorset, what did you think about front offices and their value? And very clearly, you feel that they are valuable. And they have a meaning, particularly in areas which may be more isolated. For that reason, working with Dorset Police, I'm beginning to bring back more front offices back to Dorset. Blandford reopened for a couple of days of the week recently, and there will be another one reopening shortly this week. So it's very much on my agenda. I can't talk specifics around Dorchester, but I very clearly want to bring back more front offices across Dorset. Because we've now found a way, in order, I believe, to make them economically viable. But it's baby steps, and we're looking at how we can get there. Amanda, do you want to say something else?
I think the only thing I can add to that is the reassurance that you do have a police station which is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week operational. So there are response officers working from that police station, and there are neighbourhood policing teams working from that police station, as well as some of our roads policing units and our missing person teams. So it is a busy, thriving police station, and there are a lot of police resources in that area as a result. As the Commissioner rightly said, the decision was taken to close police station and front offices some time ago. We are looking at the whole community engagement piece and including where front counters fits into that. And by that, I mean, in some areas, actually, what we found is even when we did open front counters, they weren't particularly that popular. What was more popular was us coming to you in the community and setting up community contact points on a consistent, regular basis. So you knew we would be there, you knew when, you knew who would be there, and you could come and speak to us. In some areas, we found that that was more successful than opening front offices. So we need to look at that engagement piece at the whole and say, where is it appropriate for certain types of engagement? Alongside those, as well as those regular, consistent engagement events that neighbourhood policing teams hold, our rural crime team hold specific engagement events out in our rural communities. So we don't expect our rural community to have to travel to a police station. We're holding those events out in barns, out on farms, so that we can engage with our community there.
This is a question from Alex Bailey. Can you comment on the now defunct 101 and inquiries email addresses? How can we send you video or photographic evidence in the general? Also, the website doesn't allow for attachments, so not fit for purpose. So very clearly, this is talking about the move from the 101 email to single online home and the reasons why it's more efficient. So I think I'm going to allow you to answer this, Amanda, from the point of view of what it means to the force and what it means to the people as well that this change has happened.
Thank you. And I appreciate that the 101 email was brought in at a time to tackle the issue of people waiting on the phone who had dialed 101, and that in many cases it felt quicker and easier to simply send the force an email. Unfortunately, what we saw over time was that actually the experience for the member of the public wasn't as good as we had anticipated. Often those initial emails were missing important, vital pieces of information, which meant that policing wasn't quite sure who to pass that particular query or information onto. So we then ended up with lots of backward and forward emails with the originator, which took longer than it would have taken should they filled in an online form. And now in terms of filling the form in, we can scan that and we have analytics that scan it to say which department that needs to go to, which officer or member of staff needs to respond to it. So it gets to them much quicker than something sitting in an email queue. What it will also do is scan for keywords or phrases, which will identify risk and harm and will prioritise those forms so that you get a much quicker response if there's any indication that somebody is at risk or there is harm involved. I'm afraid I can't answer the specific technical question about images and video. My understanding was that that should be able to be done on the new website. So I will have to find out about that one and get back to you.
So if I can add a little bit on that, Amanda, it's through something called Good Sam.
Yes.
Which will take images and video. But I think if it's not obvious, then I think we need to possibly do a little bit of work around that to make certain it is obvious. So yeah. I'm really pleased you said you take that one back. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I just add something in terms of that 101 email? And since we've seen Single Online Home go live, is that we are seeing that the public are getting a much quicker response. It's also taking significantly less time than working through the emails, which means we're freeing up the staff to then be able to answer the phones, because those are the same staff who answer the phone, deal with email, deal with online requests. So the more we can free them up to be available, the quicker the response time on that 101 phone call. I think we may have lost the Police and Crime Commissioner for a small period of time. We were coming to the end of the hour anyway. Oh, you're back.
I'm back. And this is my last question from Lisa Rousel. Are we ever going to get more officers on the beat, as I very rarely see one where I live? Crime is on the rise, and I think a more visible police presence would deter some of it. So I think we kind of answered that earlier around the more officers coming forward as we go across the year. The crime is on the rise. I think, Amanda, that doesn't fit with the numbers that I'm seeing generally, but do you want to talk to it?
As you said, that does fit with us getting more officers out on about, but it's also not just about being visible. My message to them is they have got to be visible, connected, and effective. They need to be effective in their areas, not just visible. And they are all up for meeting that challenge. So I'm sure they will be excited to be in your communities. In terms of crime being on the rise, actually, Dorset Police saw a small overall crime rise last year, but it was much less than almost all the other forces in the country. It was anticipated because the previous year still had a bit of a COVID effect when we saw big reductions in crime. And in the first quarter of this year, we are seeing a further reduction in crime across Dorset. But I do know, and we've mentioned this throughout the hour, it's not all about statistics. It's easy for me to say it's relatively safe. Crime is going down. We're the 6th safest county in England and Wales. But if you don't feel safe, I know that still means that I've got a job to do to ensure that the policing across Dorset does contribute to making you feel safe.
And I'm really pleased to hear that, because we can talk about stats till we're blue in the face, but it is what happens to people in their streets, in their neighbourhoods, which makes them feel safe or not. So I'm really pleased that you said that. Oh, that's nice. Thomas, that's lovely. So we've got a thank you for answering the questions. And they've also said, please, can we have more of these Q&A lives in the future? So Amanda, can we set one up for, say, 6 months' time? Do you want me to do a double?
Well, that seems a bit harsh, asking me live on Facebook. How could I refuse?
I know, I'm evil.
Yeah.
Look, thank you everybody for doing the questions this evening. And there will be some questions that inevitably we haven't been able to come to. What we'll do is we'll log those and we'll see if we can get you answers and come back to you in order to address them. Can I thank everybody who's taken part this evening? We'd have had a very lonely time if you hadn't asked the questions, and that would have never have done. And we'll continue to keep working and working together to make Dorset a safer county. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.